do the elements in the Lord's Supper, do they remain bread and wine? I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a dumb question, doesn't it? I mean, it looks like bread and wine. So the reason I ask this, or I don't get mad at me, but the reason I ask this is that the Roman Catholic Church, they teach that when the priest takes the bread and the wine during the Lord's Supper, and he pronounces the words of Jesus, which is, "This is my body and this is my blood," they believe that the bread and the wine literally turn into Jesus's body and blood, such that when you take the Lord's Supper, you're eating Jesus and you're drinking his blood. I know it's weird, but that is what they believe, and we'll get into why a little bit, but the doctrine is called transubstantiation because tran means to change, and then substantiation, it has to do with the substance of the bread and the wine. So they're saying the bread and the wine, they look like that, but the substance of them, what makes them bread and wine, changes into Jesus's body and blood. So what do we say to that? Well, we're going to disagree, but let's at least hear them out. If you look in Matthew's gospel, we're not going to turn there, but if you look, Jesus takes the bread and the wine, and he says, "This bread is my body," and he says, "This wine is my blood." And so from the Catholic's perspective, they're saying, well, if we're going to take Jesus seriously, then we need to take him literally. We need to say this is literally Jesus's body and blood. The problem with this, though, is that Jesus constantly uses metaphors and figurative language when he teaches. If we were to take Jesus literally all the time, we would have to say that Jesus is literally a vine. According to John 15, he says, "I am the vine." You and I would literally be the salt of the earth, according to Matthew 6, because he says, you guys are the salt of the earth. So you're literally salt of the earth if we were to take Jesus literally. Or in Mark 1, Jesus, he says, you guys are going to be my disciples. You're going to be fishers of men. Now, I didn't see any accounts of the disciples taking a fishing pole and fishing after men. These are metaphors. We're supposed to learn something, all right? It's not literal. And so the question then becomes, all right, well, is Jesus speaking literally or metaphorically here? And the way we're going to determine this is to look at a parallel account, because Luke and Matthew record the Lord's Supper, but Luke portrays it in a little bit of a different light. So we're going to read Luke's account to see, okay, is Jesus speaking metaphorically here? So starting in verse 19 in chapter 22, it says, "And he," that's Jesus, "took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And likewise the cup after they had eaten, saying, 'This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood.'" So you notice that at the end, okay? Jesus takes the cup and he says, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood." So if we're going to take Jesus literally, like we do with the bread in this statement, then we have to say that the new covenant is the cup that Jesus is holding. Now, no one takes it that way because Jesus is speaking metaphorically. What Jesus is really saying is he's saying that this new covenant is coming, and it's coming upon my sacrifice and my bloodshed on the cross. By my blood, the new covenant is being established. And so the reality is that this is a metaphor. So we need to take a couple things from this metaphor. The bread and the wine, they teach us two things, okay? They're not literally Jesus's body and blood. However, they are visible reminders that Jesus was physically sacrificed for us. Jesus physically sacrificed himself for us. Just as we can see and touch the bread, so the disciples saw and touched Jesus. They saw the nails pierce through his hands and the blood spill from his body. So as we approach the Lord's Supper, we should not forget that, yes, Jesus was truly God, but he was truly human. He had flesh and blood just like you and I. And so just like the bread, we break the bread, right? Well, Jesus broke his body on the cross. When we pour the wine out from the cup, it's the same way that Jesus poured the blood out from his body on the cross. That's what the bread and the wine is telling us. And so you and I, we didn't witness the crucifixion, but God in his mercy, what he's done with the Lord's Supper is he's given us visible, tangible reminders of this reality that Jesus was a man who went and sacrificed himself for us. So as you come to the Lord's Supper, remember that Jesus that's the love that he had for you. He physically sacrificed himself for you.